Let's talk about this conservative proposal. We're now joined by Mike Moffat. In addition to being the founding director of Place Center at the Smart Prosperity Institute, he has also advised the Trudeau government in the past on housing policies. Mike Moffat, thank you for joining us again.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, I've been reading some of your reaction or assessment of this plan, and you're rather bullish on what has been proposed here by Mr. Poilievre. You wrote that the proposal is the boldest middle-class housing proposal released to date from any federal political party. How would this type of move make housing more accessible and affordable?
Well, it basically gives a 5% cost cut to any new home under $1 million, because that's the value of the GST. There is an existing housing rebate that new home buyers can get some of the GST back that they pay, but this hadn't been updated since 1991, and the maximum home value that makes you eligible for a rebate is only $450,000. So basically, it doesn't exist in much of the country because you're not going to be able to get a home for that much. So what the Poilievre Conservatives are doing is saying, okay, we're going to increase that maximum from $450,000 to $1 million, and we're going to make it so that you get all of the GST back that you would normally have to pay, not just a portion of it. So this is going to put $4 billion a year back into the pockets of first-time homebuyers.
Okay,
or new home buyers, I should say.
Yeah, new home buyers. Except, I'm from Toronto. I've lived and worked in Vancouver. When you talk about $1 million, that doesn't really get you a home that can accommodate a family in those cities. Oftentimes, you're talking about a studio or a bachelor apartment, maybe a one-bedroom, a junior one-bedroom at that price range. So it could help individuals, but what about families?
Well, yeah, and I think that's actually the biggest kind of downside to this plan. That I actually think it works in most of the country where, you would be able to get a family-sized home for under $1 million. But we know there are two markets in particular where that doesn't work, and that's the Greater Toronto area and Greater Vancouver area. So I would have liked to see this cap raised to about 1.5 million rather than 1 million. That's the value of that the federal government has put on being able to access an insured mortgage. So while I don't think this is a perfect plan, I would like to see that cap raised a little bit, and there can be maybe a bit of a phase out there. It is a good plan, but yeah, we need to tweak it a little bit to make it work for both Toronto and Vancouver.
Okay, adjustments, but when you talk about adjustments, I'm wondering about protection as well, because I wonder if this policy might, for example, drive up the price of housing if builders incorporate any tax relief into the price that they charge for homes.
Well, certainly, builders and developers are going to try and maximize their profits, and how they're going to do that is by building more homes, by looking at this kind of increased demand and create more inventory. So the Conservatives are estimating that this will help create an extra 30,000 homes a year. We haven't run the numbers here, but that seems like a plausible estimate. But yeah, I think it is fair to say that builders and developers will capture part of this value, but it'll get more homes built. That right now, builders and developers in much of the country aren't able to make sales at all. They don't really have that much pricing power. We've seen the condo market all but collapse in Toronto and Vancouver. So I think what this is going to do is give buyers a little bit more buying power. So I do think that they're largely going to benefit from this because, again, in much of the country, we're not seeing that builders and developers have all that much pricing power right now.
Okay. Now, to pay for this program, Mr. Poilievre says that he would essentially collapse the Liberal home programs, namely the Housing Accelerator Fund and the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. Would those be needed if people just had more money to buy homes through these tax cuts?
Yeah, I think we should keep those policies. Those programs aren't working as well as they should. They're meant to incentivize municipal behavior, incentivize creating the conditions to build homes at the municipal level. The infrastructure fund, for instance, requires requires cities to freeze development charges. We've seen the city of Ottawa increase development charges twice in the last 6 months. So unfortunately, municipalities are kind of thumbing their nose a little bit at some of the requirements, and it's really making these programs not as effective as they should be. But I would like to see them reformed rather than thrown out entirely, because I actually think they work really well together, where the GST cut helps people actually afford a home. And these other programs like the Housing Accelerator and the Infrastructure Fund allow cities to create the infrastructure to make sure that these neighborhoods can get built in the first place.
Okay, so you'd like to see both the proposal being put forward by Mr. Poilievre as well as what's already existing on the Liberals to coexist. But if you actually look at what's being offered here by Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Trudeau, because it seems to be a choice that they're offering at this point, which would get more people into homes that they can actually afford?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a wash. I think the conservative plan creates more affordability. It puts more money in people's pockets. So I think the conservative plan does more to make middle-class housing more affordable. I do think, these other policies as they're presently constituted, I don't think they necessarily create more or less housing than the GST plan. But again, what I would like to see is the federal government, credits Poilievre with a good idea. Say, you know what, we're going to take that idea, we're going to tweak it, maybe push it up to 1.5 million. And do these things. That we have dug ourselves such a hole when it comes to housing. We need a wartime-like effort to address the housing crisis. We need every tool possible. So this needs to be an and conversation, not an or conversation.
Mike Moffat, appreciate the time once again. Thank you for that.
No, thank you for having me.